something I feel like we do when we're not parents is sometimes we can like judge parents, no? So I'm wondering, like, do y'all feel like you judge parents? How do you feel about kids on a plane? Do you feel compassion? Are you rolling your eyes? Like, just some like quick thoughts on how y'all think.
Listen and we sometimes have to judge. Sometimes we do gotta judge.
Escuchamos, pero no juzgamos. Well, girl, I mean, I know. Honestly, I feel like what I feel when I hear kids crying is definitely compassion. Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, girl, si yo me estoy desesperando y no es mi hijo, imagínate to the parents. Like, and you having to manage that. And I'm like, and that's an everyday thing. That's not like a 10-hour flight or a 3-hour flight for me.
Yeah.
And so I feel compassion in that way. I think there's other things that I do judge.
Yeah.
But at least in that situation, I do feel a little bit more compassion. And I'm like, girl, I'm grateful for the noise cancellation.
I was going to say,
It's
invest
like,
in those headphones because you don't hear nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Las Paleteras.
Hola, hola, paletitas o paletotas, whatever your flavor is. I'm Ana Sheila.
I'm César Camacho.
And I'm José Richard, alias Nalgona.
And welcome back to another episode of Las Paleteras, el podcast donde, fill it in.
Vengo a contar mis chismes.
Y lo que
Si no te llevas, pues ni modo.
Ay.
Porque hay mucha carrilla.
Tienes que aguantar.
Y tienes que aguantarte.
All right, y'all. Pues I've been feeling really vulnerable, very tender. And because like, I'm not gonna lie, like it's hard to just deal with the news that every day feels like is attacking like our sense of safety, our sense of belonging, like todas las cosas, right? And I feel like we always talk about, pero somos so resilient. Like we've gone through this and like we can get through everything, right? Somos immigrants, kids of immigrants, whatever. Pero también like resilience is like fucking tiring. Like it's also like a trauma response. So I want to open up by talking a little bit about what's been helping us get through this period. So I wanted to introduce this concept. Have you guys heard of glimmers before?
Yeah.
No.
So I feel like this is a really important time for us to lean into our resources, our community, whatever really helps us. And so I wanted to introduce this concept, a practice that someone told me about, the idea of glimmers. Have you guys heard of glimmers before?
No.
I recently shot a short film titled Glimmer.
Yeah.
And it was basically on this like aspect of like little moments of joy that like you reflect on and it brings you back to a moment that you like want to cherish and continue to like find that happiness in that moment.
Yeah.
Or even bad trimmer.
Yeah, exactly.
Bad glimmers too. But.
So a glimmer is described as a tiny micro moment, in this case of joy. It can be fleeting. They're everyday moments that elicit a rush of happiness, of peace, of joy, calm. Basically makes you feel well. ¿Por qué te ríes, pendeja?
Because I'm like...
I'm saying something serious
No,
right here.
I love it. The first thing that came to my mind, I was like, for some people that I've been with, it's their orgasms.
Hey.
And that's a glimmer.
That's a glimmer.
Yeah.
Your orgasm is a glimmer.
That's what my mind went to. I know.
And Sheila's trying to be all
Right.
I'm trying to have a moment.
Motivational.
But you know what?
Joy.
I love that. You literally were having... You had a glimmer.
Honestly, sometimes sex, if you're stressed out, sex helps out.
Yes.
You find those glimmers.
So basically, the point that I'm trying to make is this practice of glimmers. We have to look for things that we have to be more mindful of paying attention to those things that are helping us. And glimmers is just one thing. It requires us, though, to pay a little bit more attention to finding those glimmers, right? Because especially when we're in this time of hearing all these news, which seems to be so negative for especially our community, sometimes you get stuck in that and we have a harder time of finding these glimmers and the things that are all around us that can make us at least, it doesn't mean that like shit doesn't suck, but can we still find those little moments of joy and peace? And I know I've had a harder time with that, so I'm trying to lean into like practices like this. So I wanted to ask y'all what are some glimmers for you right now, or if there's some other practices, if not glimmers, that have been helping you feel a sense of belonging or peace through these times.
Nalgona's like sex.
Well, I mean, that's the first
No,
thing.
but yeah.
That's the first thing that crossed my mind. I mean, like, usted sabe ya en casita que una siempre es puta. Se sabe. But I think the dance floor, like I have so much fun dancing that sometimes it's like little dances, or if I hear a certain salsa song, because, you know, salsa is what I love to dance the most. If I hear it, then it'll remind me of like the 7 different partners that I've danced that song with, right? And it brings up some sense of joy. Like I always love Que locura enamorarme de ti. And that's like my song. And so every time it comes up, it just brings up all of these emotions and dance partners that I've danced with.
I love that.
Y también el faje, amiga. Una que anda bien chorreada. Ay,
Stop. Not the chorreada.
I love it. Now I feel like the next
That's
time
someone's kids out there.
the next time I have a
Escurriendo.
partner, I'm going to be in my orgasm. They're going to be like, what you doing, glimmering?
Where's your place of glimmer? The orgy. I'm kidding. Yo no.
Cállate.
¿Qué tal tú, César?
I have 2. Recently, like driving around and like listening to like different artists that I love.
Like a little like joyrides kind
Yeah,
of?
but the gas prices are expensive, so I'm like, I don't know about.
Oh yeah, but
I just
have
take,
you
like, the
noticed that
longer
if you have
route.
cash, it's like 30 cents cheaper?
Yeah, and
per
then they
gallon?
lie. You see like the signs, and then you put gas, and you're like, it doesn't match what the
doesn't
sign
match,
says.
yeah.
But yeah, driving around, I take the longer route now, just to like put my windows down, my sunroof open, and listen
Hey,
to
the
music.
sunroof.
I know. I was like, y una que no maneja. I'm like,
No, well, now you're gonna be back in LA.
No, pues no, tampoco manejo.
Oh, en la bici, en la bici.
En la bici.
La bici, the transportation planner out here. They don't drive.
True, that's true. And then something that I did the other day, I usually make it an effort to like call all my tias in Mexico and like my grandparents. But like last Sunday, I just went through like 4 hours of like calling everyone on WhatsApp, like through video llamada and like catching up. And it was just like nice, like,
Yeah.
because I feel like I try to talk to my parents every day, but like
Yeah.
sometimes you don't get to talk about deep stuff because you're like stressed with work and other stuff. But like that Sunday, nomás en puro chisme ahí recogiendo and like lavando todo. But
Yeah.
it was cute.
Cute. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing that. Okay, so I want to transition into what we're talking about today, which I feel like is something that also, it's something that we grew up sort of taking for granted. Maybe when we were younger, we just thought you were supposed to do this. But I think also as queer people and also in these times that we're living in, it's something that you don't necessarily now, like, it's not an automatic. And what I'm talking about is like having a family and having kids. So it's something that just feels a lot harder today. So I wanted to open up with a hot opening question, a hot take. So I feel like there's people in different camps. There's people that think it's selfish to bring children into this world, right? Because there is the belief that estamos que, you know, that there isn't a lot of time left for this earth, or, you know, environmentally, or for whatever reasons, what we're seeing, the second coming of World War II, whatever you want to call it, right? That it's selfish to bring someone into this world right now. And there's another camp that thinks that it's selfish not to have children. So I want to ask y'all, hot take, which side are you on?
I feel like they're both like valid points.
Yeah.
I guess for me, if you really want to have a kid, like,
Pero tú.
I don't know. I want children, so I feel like I do want kids.
Yeah.
Well, then how do
So
you...
I don't know if I...
But how do you process the current... Like, would you have a kid now? Or would you want to have a kid in 10 years from now?
Well, the thing is for me, I feel like and I don't know if this is like a valid reason, I feel like I want my parents... I know my parents are going to be amazing grandparents, and I want them to have that. And it's like me and my younger sister, and I feel like she's not going to have kids anytime soon. Like, she's not dating anyone, and she just graduated college. But like all my parents, like friends and like parientes, they all have grandkids now, like all my mom's siblings. And I feel like she's like one of the last ones that doesn't. And I'm like, I feel bad because I'm like holding them back. But also like they're so supportive of like me doing my own thing. And I'm not in any place ready to bring a kid into this world and give them everything they need. So I feel selfish like that, like not having a kid yet, if that makes sense. Because I want them to have that.
So it's you're kind of thinking about them.
I'm thinking about them. I know.
That's interesting.
Because I feel like they're amazing with kids, and I want my kids to have my parents now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and enjoy them now, like while they're in their 50s or 60s.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that selfish?
No.
No, I guess no.
I don't think so.
No?
I mean,
How about you?
I honestly never thought of having children.
You never did. Not even
Never at
when
all?
even when you were little, you didn't think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a parent.
¿No quieres como 10 chiquillos?
Nunca lo imaginaste. Oh.
I think I
okay,
had
okay,
a very
okay.
sort of like, I was either going to be alone my whole life, and maybe that's my own insecurity about it, but there were never children in my future. Maybe at some point, maybe because I only thought that the only way to have children was biologically.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you grow up and then you realize that there's other ways to also be a parent.
Yeah.
Whatever the adoptions are. I mean, there's so many other ways, right? And even then now, when I think about the option is there for me, it's still something I don't want. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like, no, like I'm having such a good time being alone. I'm having a great time being single. And I also don't want, I mean, like the great Samantha Jones says, right? Like I've been in a relationship the longest with myself and that's the one I need to work on.
Yeah.
And I'd rather let that be the relationship I move forward and that's the relationship I parent. But I think to your point, Cesar, I'm like somewhere in between because I have a nephew.
Yeah.
So even though like I definitely believe that right now, I'm like, who's having children right now? Like, it's wild times.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And so I think a part of me may think that it is selfish to have children.
Yeah.
I have to be a little bit more mindful because there's a child in my life.
Yeah.
And you know, there's boundaries around like how like my nephew, when he was born, I first thought that he was the closest I'd ever come to being a parent. So then I think the parenting in me kind of took over. And then I had to realize, but that's my sister's child. So I had to put boundaries for myself. Like, I mean, I'm not going to be there all the time or be over parenting or judging my sister as a parent.
Yeah.
So to sum it up, while I think I have my own ideas and, you know, thoughts of not having children or wanting children, there's still a child in my life. And so I have to like find the balance between my personal views and then also showing up for a child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I think that like either one, like, I think it's all subjective, right? Like what someone thinks is selfish or doesn't. Yeah. And even if like something is selfish, meaning you're putting yourself first, like that isn't always like a bad thing to be putting yourself first as you think about whether you have a child or not, right? Because ultimately you need to feel like you can be a good parent in order to bring a child. And if you feel like you're not going to be capable of actually raising children in the way that you would like to, and that's like how you're deciding whether or not, then like I feel like that's a really, maybe it's selfish, but it's like you're self-aware of the fact that maybe you wouldn't be a good parent. And so we shouldn't, so I think what I love about the times that we live in now is that people can actually really think intentionally about whether they are like set out to be parents. And that's not necessarily everyone's like job in this world, right? But 100%. So grateful for the people that want to and are potentially going to be really great parents, right? But I mean, I think, so I guess like I think, yeah, I don't know where I land on what's selfish. It's like maybe all of it is selfish and maybe that's a little bit of that is okay. But the thing is, we do need some people to continue to have babies because we are seeing like a really, like a birth rate decline that if it's not addressed, like... I'm like, I think it's okay for a couple of generations though. Yeah, no.
Like we need to scale back a little.
Right. But it needs to be addressed at some point in the next like several decades, but it's like,
years.
Yeah, it's
100%.
Yeah, no, you're like, I mean, let's get sigan. Well, hopefully let's make the world better so that people can have children and it doesn't have to feel like they can like not raise kids in a way that's sustainable, because that's how it's feeling for a lot 100%. Of us to consider having children, right?
And we also have to be very mindful that we are definitely, I think as we're talking about this, we're talking about children from a place of agency. And we also have to be like, I guess, mindful that agency is being threatened right now. And it has been threatened for a couple of years now in different states. And it's just like the notion of it becoming a federal thing now in the way that it's kind of unfolding and unpacking. Yeah. And so also just to extend some grace to people who like end up having children not planned or unintentionally. Right. You know what I mean? And because I think of when I met my nephew, it's a really beautiful and weird and scary type of love, because when I met my nephew was a NICU baby. And I met my nephew and I cried. And in that moment, it was like legit love at first sight that I was like, I don't know you, but I know that I would do anything for you.
Yeah.
And I'm here for you. And then my sister, she had a C-section, so she was in a wheelchair and we were there together. And I remember my sister crying and I hugged her and then I cried. And then in that moment, I realized that my relationship with my sister forever changed.
Yeah.
Because now she's a mom. And I think as being older than her, it's always been so in my mind that I have to be a role model for something. But to be like, I can't be a role model and being a parent because I'm not a parent and I have no idea. But even now, my nephew is 5 and it's so funny. The other day, not too long ago, he was with me and I was taking care of him. And I've taken care of him before, but it's different now because he's 5. And so he's now asking all these questions.
Yeah.
And we were walking across the street and
My
I
niece
just
is 5
remember,
too.
oh, I love
Yeah.
that. Oh.
Yeah.
And I got a play date.
And I remember like holding his hand
Yeah.
and crossing the street. And in that moment, all of the worst case scenarios were in my mind and I had to know how to respond to everything.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I have to protect this little person. And then to think about that, like, but that is parenting 24/7.
Yeah. 24/7.
Like ever. Because
Forever.
my mom was like, and that's how I think about you even in your 30s. And I was like, oh, I don't want that level of commitment.
Parenting never ends.
Parenting never ends. And I was just like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's scary. And I was like, I literally like, I should text my sister this, but a deeper admiration because I'm like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Like I was with him for 3 hours and I was
And
panicked.
that was it. Yeah.
Like I can't
That's all
imagine
you
having
could
a
do.
chiquillo like running around all day, every day.
100%.
Like,
And I know some dope ass parents who are artists, but big shout out to my friend Isis, who is a parent, and like their child grew up, going to dance classes, coming to being a part of it. And I
They were
think,
integrated.
they were
Yeah.
integrated and they go to dance and they dance with us. But it's so beautiful that community, was a part of that. But I always find their child and my nephew are similar. Se llevan meses. But it's so beautiful to see also her, my friend Isis, the admiration of it. I'm like, bitch, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Like I'm out here panicking about everything.
I
And
know.
then there's a little person around. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, I think it's
mis
like,
respetos.
I know, right? I mean, I think cuando no te queda otra, sale energía, sale where you don't think you have it, right?
Yeah.
But I like the point that you brought up about kind of agency in it. What it takes me back to is just like ultimately we have to do, we have to stop caring what other people think we should do too and do what we think is best for us and the kind of impact we want to have. Porque, like for me, it's like I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't, right? It's like when I think about like how society is perceiving me, right? As like, if I don't have children, right? It's like society looks at women that are childless, especially like with our new administration, like they really want to demonize women who choose not to have children, 100%. Especially, right? Because they want to remind the world or want to like instill this idea that our women's value is like in our birthing, right? And it's fucking terrible, right? It's like, but then for me, most likely if I do have children, it'll likely be through IVF. And these same people who want to demonize people for being childless also don't think that we should have children through IVF. So it's like, at that point, it's like, and the same thing, we come back to the hot take, like selfish or not selfish. It's like, at the end of it all, like, we just have to do whatever we think is best for our life and the kind of impact that we want to have through the choices that we make, including rearing children, right? Or not rearing children.
I think maybe one thing I am realizing, and I hope it's, I mean, we've always talked about this, but I think what I've learned about parenting now, like I love the role of being a tia. Like it's the best role. That's my role and purpose in parenting, because I think, there's also, I mean, I don't know if it's a norm or not, but like parenting is communal.
Yeah, ideally, right?
100% ideally. That's also very true. I've learned like the best type of parenting is communal, when you know that there is a group of people who are behind the well-being of the child at hand. You know what I mean? And like, again, and seeing the relationship that my sister has with my nephew, it's funny because I'm like, why does my nephew like love you? Like, I mean, but I've known her whole life. You know what I
Your
mean? She's
sister,
my
yeah.
sister. But
Like-
just to see the unconditional love that they have
Yeah.
for each other, I learned really quickly that my role was to ensure that nothing and no one got in the way of their relationship. That's my role. To be the, not even protector, but to be the parent of her ecosystem.
Yeah.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
That was a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. And I think that, like that's like a very selfless way of looking at your role, and where people might be like, oh, you're selfish for not wanting to have like children, but like actually you've realized the best way that you can contribute to a child's life or your sister's life is being a really great tío, tía, whatever.
Yeah,
you
And
know.
a present one too, because I feel like we have so many tíos and tías that ni los vemos, they never give us advice. So you being there, like he's not gonna forget that. Which is so cute.
And I think it's a beautiful thing of knowing of like, again, I can't parent my sister, or I can't tell my sister how to be
How
a
to parent,
parent.
yeah.
So I'm not mad that my nephew calls me tío. He calls me tío Richie.
Yeah.
But I know that Richie, for example, is a nickname that it's only nobody calls me Richie.
Yeah.
But my mom's side of the family. So it's sacred. So even if it's Tío Richie and not Tia or Titi or whatever, Tío Richie, there's only one person in the world that calls me that, and it's my
And
nephew.
it's your nephew.
And all I have to do is show up authentic and know that by just being me,
Yeah.
I've already changed his life. Because then it's like, maybe one day, my little nephew's going to stumble on Las Paleteras and be like, my tia said what? And I was like,
She was doing what?
right. That's why I don't have
Who's
any
el
little-
cachorro? No, I'm kidding.
Ay, no. Atacada, qué fuerte. Ya lo mandamos a la perra, era el cachorro. Ya se fue a morir. Put that in the
That's it.
episode.
The last time we mentioned the
That's it.
cachorro.
Last time we mentioned it.
R.I.P.
Sorry.
R.I.P.
You set it up.
Okay, but before we do a
R.I.P.
deeper dive in some of these parenting topics, do you want to do us a favor and do our ¿Sabías qué?
Sí, amigas, bienvenidas otra vez a esta sección que aman del podcast, que es ¿Sabías qué? So, according to a study from February last year, the Pew Research Center poll, apparently 30% of 18 to 34-year-olds, o sea, millennials, that don't have kids, aren't sure if they want any, and 18% of them say that they don't. O sea, within our generation, millennials, 18 to 34-year-olds, some people ain't trying to have kids. Like, they're not sure, and then they're like, other flat out, I'm the 18%. No los quiero.
No los quiere. 1 in 5.
1 in 5. 1 in 5. That was so much easier.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, I can't even
Well,
do math
I mean,
like
a
that.
little less. A little less. Ahí está.
Approx.
Approx, I don't know.
And that was this week's episode of
¿Sabías
qué?
Oh, that's cute.
Paleta, ¿quién quiere su crema?
Por
Yo
favor.
quiero leche.
Leche.
A ver, productora, we have a question.
Ay,
Ay, pero no te caigas.
don't fart on me, girl. Don't fart on me.
Okay.
A ver, productora, we have a question for
Yo de
you.
mango.
For
What is
me.
this, Coco?
For you.
Estamos hablando
Yo no.
about
Yo quiero de
children.
You said mango.
This is mango.
Oh, perdón. It's because it look kind of white.
Because it's
Because it has crema.
Crema. Oh, my
We're
bad.
talking about children. Y tú que estás casada, tú que eres una señora de casa. Do y'all want children?
¿Y cómo los quieren? ¿Y cuántos quieren?
you guys are
¿Y de
so
dónde los
cute.
quieren?
You need-
¿Cómo, cuándo, dónde, por dónde?
Unos 10 hijos.
¿Cómo, dónde, cuándo? All
¿Y
that
cuántos?
for kids.
¿Y cuántos?
I mean, we've like talked about it, but like, I mean, we're in our early 30s. Well, he's like late 30s, mid 30s. But I'm just like, I'm still a kid. I'm a baby.
His face right now.
That's so funny. That's such a 2025 answer.
Yeah.
I'm still a kid in my early
Still-
30s. ¿verdad?
still-
I'm not an adult yet.
I'm still making my mistakes. I'm still like learning. Yeah, I'm still like learning things about myself and stuff. But also, I think like the main thing that kind of puts me on pause about kids is
Yeah.
just the economy. You know, like, am I going to be able to provide the best life I want and can for my little children? I definitely do want some, and I know Joel, the other producer, does want some kids. I don't want to do just one. I want to do like 2, 3.
Yeah. No
You know?
only children here. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no single kids. Like, quiero que tenga un amiguito. I mean, that's what I always wanted. I was a single kid, single child until I was 15, 16. But by then I was like,
yeah. You don't need it anymore.
old. Yeah, it's like, well, why are you here?
Right. They became estorbos.
yeah.
You should have come like a long time ago.
Yeah, like, oh, there goes my college fund. Like,
To pay for the quinceañera.
yeah, literally. So, but yeah, I think we're just like we're feeling it out and seeing like in the next 3-4 years how we feel.
That's I think that sheds like light on what we're saying about how like people are much more like intentional now than like before, when we used to be like, oh, that's what we're doing, and like you weren't thinking about like, oh, do I feel like I know myself yet before I have children, right?
Or like financially too. Like that's a really good point. Because I would want to have kids, but can I pay for other little art classes yet? Like I want to make sure they're like they could get everything that I didn't get in a way.
And I think, I mean, when people like straight people, like people just get pregnant and like they just decide to keep them and they just do it. They just figure it out. They get thrown into it and then they figure it out. So, I mean, if that were the case for us, I feel like we could all like figure it out and do it. But just like having that extra moment to think about it is like, but do we want to put ourselves through it and stress about it?
Yeah.
You know? So,
Also, surrogates are expensive.
and that too, that's another thing. It's like now, like for us, we can't just do it. Like we have to pay money.
You
to,
could
like,
just do it with the homie. No, I'm kidding.
I mean,
I always make the joke. I'm like, if I ever had a child, I'd get the adoption papers or whatever papers. Be like, you see this bitch? It's a receipt. I'm gonna go get a refund. Pórtate mal y te voy a devolver.
Oh my God.
Pórtate mal. That's why it shouldn't be a fair.
No, I have a friend that we're always like, wait, we'd have such cute babies. If you don't find a man and I don't find my man, we'll just have a chiquillo or something. Like as a joke. But I'm like, we could at this point. It'll save us $80,000.
You know what I feel about that? Now I'm starting to feel like that about marriage. We did that episode about marriage and I was making the joke with the producers yesterday. I was like, you know what? I feel at this point, I think I might just get married out of having the partnership of like, you pay the light bill. And then I was like, but
I'll get the Wi-Fi.
Like, it's like a roommate with benefits.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know?
And then
A
chiquillo.
different kind of partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also these rates, it's kind of crazy because I'm thinking about like my grandparents living in a rancho back in the day. Like my grandma had 14 kids.
Yeah.
My great grandma had 18 kids. And it's like, now my tios, like my mom's siblings are having 5
It's still a lot.
or 6
Yeah.
or 2. But my primos are all like 1,
Yeah.
barely 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, it's
You see the
declining
decline.
so
Yeah,
much,
it's really
100%,
rapidly.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Gracias.
Thank you so much for having
Thank
me.
you.
basura.
Of
Ay,
course.
should I get another one? No.
You want another?
They're so good.
All right. Thank you, Paleteras.
Go make your babies.
Think about it. So Nagona, you're a total like you're sure like it's not you always
Never gonna happen?
Never gonna you knew it. Nunca te entrado a la mente, nunca.
Really? I feel like
No quiero hijos, pero sí me los trago, bebé. Llámame. Slide in the DMs.
traga bien. No kidding. Han dicho pues.
Ya, porque van a
He
decir
escuchado en
el
las
chisme,
calles.
Van a decir en el chisme. Ay, no, Jota. Ay,
No, she needs a break from tanta leche.
no es cierto. A mí échenme la leche.
Colágeno, vitamina C.
Agárrame las manos y dime, mira, no vas a tener hijos, pero aquí están los míos. Ay.
Barca-
Sorry. We're derailing.
We carry other people's kids sometimes.
But, call me seahorse. But no,
Yeah.
even having the thought of having an animal, just having another living creature, I'm like, I don't want it. I am very happy being by myself. I mean, sometimes I do get lonely, but I assess of like, where is that loneliness coming from? Is it like a moment or is it like a, a period of time and then there's other ways to build community, to be in community. So no, I think
Yeah, so I guess let me ask like there's a different question, right? It's like building the idea of building a family, right?
Yeah.
Like what does that look like? And that can or cannot include children, right?
Because that question, you brought up a really good point too. Like, I always have the same thing, like being alone. Like if you get older, like quien te va a cuidar, tus hijos, and like that's like building that family and like having that foundation, which always scares me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Because you have your partner, but then like if
100%.
you and your partner don't have
children.
or your sister's too busy with her kids, like,
Right.
quien te va a cuidar? But also, are we going to make it that old at this point?
Ay,
At this rate?
I mean, if it does happen, I luckily have younger brothers, and there's a significant age difference. There's like a 16 and 14 year difference. So luckily in my mind, and my mom always tells them this, they're always like, when Richard gets old, y'all go take care of them. And I'm like, okay.
Or to
so-
nephew too.
And my nephew, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's the family that I'm building. I had the thought, and we've talked about this before in our aging episode, but just even realizing that I'm just more coming into that age where my little brother now is going to be 21 this year. My youngest brother is 18. And I was like, we're all adults. And so what does this mean now? And so now I'm having adult conversations or more serious conversations with all of my siblings. And for a long time, it was just me and my sister. Then now the youngest ones, even there's a significant age gap, are entering this realm of adulthood. And so now it's interesting to think about that that's the little family that is forming. And even not that my parents are still around, but when they're not, it's like I'm setting the foundations for what this family is going to look like. And that's interesting. And definitely, of course, there's friends, really good friends. I talk a lot about my friend, shout out to Ted. I love my friend Ted. But we've joked around that it's like, fuck it, if we're both single, let's just get married. And I'm like, you know what? For the convenience of it and in a non-conventional marriage, I totally marry my friend Ted and it'd be a different open relationship and we're both hoes. It's just a straight hoe and I'm a queer hoe. And it's like, go ahead, do you. I'm
The
doing
whole
me.
house.
Yeah. He's the only one that when I got the little pup tattoo, he's the only one that responded and was like, was that a sexual thing? And I was like, oh, you know me so well. So he's part of that family that I include for sure. And then there's other like primas, you know, who are not really my primas, but are primas that are a part of it for sure. So I'm happy with the families that it's forming.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about being queer and like what I've been, and I don't know if I've talked about this before, but trying to find liberation through my queerness, because I think my relationship with children has like changed, right? Like when I was younger, I just like imagined that that's what I was gonna do. And then as I got older, I was like, well, I don't feel like a natural like mother. Like I don't feel like a mother. Like wasn't like dreaming about being pregnant and having babies, and like the thought of being pregnant like seemed kind of, I don't know, maybe how y'all feel when you think about being pregnant. Like that just feels so alien, right? That feels so weird. Like if you try to imagine y'all being pregnant, like that's weird as fuck, right?
Also at that age too, like,
but just period. Like I just like, I was like, yeah, like it just felt like really alien to me to like think about being pregnant. And then as I got older, like I was like, oh wait, actually, like it doesn't, like there was just like a point where it didn't feel so weird to think about being pregnant. But I'm like, oh shit, I haven't been thinking about like having children. Like that's something you sort of think about like more thoughtfully and are like looking for a partner, and you're doing these things thinking that you want to have children. And like I just hadn't been operating that way. So now it's like, oh shoot, like now I'm older and I'm queer and all these things. And like, but I think I've found some freedom in my queerness, and I'm trying to like keep remembering to come back to that, right? Because if I see myself in like my journey through the eyes of like heteronormativity, I always struggle with that word. Someone say it for me.
I can't say it either.
Heteronormativity.
Yeah, heteronormativity.
There we go, I got it. Like if I'm gonna like feel like not good about myself, right? But if I look at it through the lens of like, okay, no matter what, you're going to be an alternative parent anyways. Like you're going to be, just being a queer parent, it's already alternative. So I'm going to be older if I choose to have children. But it's like remembering that I have the freedom to think about how to create a family and what that can look like, right? And it can be so many different ways, right? Maybe I still carry, but so I went through the process of freezing my eggs, and I thought of it as a way to like give me that freedom to be able to create and bring in life, like have the freedom of thinking about how I do want to create a family and giving myself that opportunity to explore it in different ways. Like maybe I still carry it, maybe I don't, maybe it's my partner, or I don't know. I at this point, I'm also like open to the fact that who knows, and also like grieving. Like maybe I get to the point, like because I don't feel ready. Like maybe I get to the point where it just like I don't. Why am I getting emotional? Because I feel like as you get older, it also feels harder to like think about adding kids to your life when you've lived so long without them. So there may be a point where like I just don't want to anymore because it feels too hard. And also like grieving that, like who knows? Yeah. But also just like being like with whatever happens is like what, like following what feels right for us, and just like giving myself the freedom to, como pase va a pasar, and I'm creating a lot of different ways to think about this and imagine life and a family, and it could even be maybe co-parenting with who knows, like with maybe there's like a gay man in my life too, and like we're I don't know, who knows? I'm just like, just be free with it and stop putting so much pressure on what it looks like, and that's been like a beautiful thing to try to let go of, like, but it's hard, ¿verdad? So yeah,
you know what I had to grieve with? It's also just to see you, friend. To make it a little light, Ana Sheila, before we started filming, was like, I'm gonna make you cry this episode, and I could cry today. Yeah. But you know what? What's one thing I did grieve with my nephew not being the padrino?
Oh, ¿no te hicieron el padrino?
And I was like, damn, bitch. My sister was like, fool, you're never around. Damn. Like, you're always flying somewhere, you're traveling. And it wasn't like out of a place of shame. And my cousin is the madrina, and I love her. And I was like, yeah, you're a great madrina. But and then my sister was like, but no one's ever gonna take away the title of tío, bitch. And I was like, but I wanted to be a padrino. Because
you could still be a padrino. He could choose you.
First, right.
Primera comunión, confirmación.
Hey, you have several opportunities.
I have several opportunities, for sure.
And those he chose, so those are more meaningful.
Wow. No, but I mean, to your point, right? Like, there is that moment of grieving. And I think it's part of the aging process where you're just like, well, fuck. And it may not necessarily be children, but there's like a turning point or a threshold when you're just like, well, fuck, I don't know if I can do some of these things that I wanted to do because of 1, 2, and 3. Like, for in some ways, and you'll get here in your 30s. But there's a moment where, like, you know, you live a certain amount of time, and you're like, I feel like I've laid out the foundation and the road, and now I just gotta go down it.
Yeah.
And maybe, and it does happen for, you know, life might take you down a whole different path.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is that you're open to that as well, but also reconciling with the fact of, like, this might be the camino. Los caminos de la vida no son como yo pensaba. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think, you know, and I think remembering as we age that, you know, there is still a lot that we can play with, but there, you know, as we age, there are some things like ya no se pueden, like you can't. There's some things you just can't do anymore. Yeah. Like, and that's like an interesting thing to sort of reckon with as we get older, ¿verdad?
Yeah, I can't self-suck like I used to in my 20s.
I'll
be disclosing.
Are you sure? Con no tan práctica?
Ay, bebé. Ay, no. No, hoy see, now I need knee pads if I'm going to be in all four. I'm like,
wait,
cabrón, espérate.
Low key, like some positions, como que, yeah.
I once had a position. I was in a position once, and then I forgot what happened, and then me tronaron todas las caderas, and I was like, damn, bitch. Literally, you opened me
dislocating.
Up. Not dislocating my hip. Señora, think
Pero un fundillo, bien que no sé. I'm kidding.
All right, y'all. So real quick, I mean, something I feel like we do when we're not parents is sometimes we can like judge parents, no? So I'm wondering, like, do y'all feel like you judge parents? How do you feel about kids on a plane? Do you feel compassion? Are you rolling your eyes? Like, just some like quick thoughts on how y'all think.
Listen, and we sometimes have to judge. Sometimes we do gotta judge.
Escuchamos, pero no juzgamos. Well, girl, I mean, I know. Honestly, I feel like what I feel when I hear kids crying is definitely compassion. Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, girl, si yo me estoy desesperando y no es mi hijo, imagínate tú the parents. Yeah. Like, and you having to manage that. And I'm like, and that's an everyday thing. That's not like a 10-hour flight or a 3-hour flight for me.
Yeah.
So I feel compassion in that way. I think there's other things that I do judge.
Yeah.
But at least in that situation, I do feel a little bit more compassion. And I'm like, girl, I'm grateful for the noise cancellation.
I was going to say,
it's
invest in those headphones because you don't hear nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, I agree.
Nothing.
I agree.
Are you a judgy?
No, I am very compassionate because I'm like, it's already stressful traveling by yourself, but having to like grab those chiquillos and make sure they don't lose their stuff and running around.
And they're feeling bad too.
Yeah, and they feel bad. But sometimes when they're like kicking still behind, like when I was me tocó and I'm like, my mom would have been like, bah, like te placas o te placo, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm trying to be compassionate, but like it tests you sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
it just depends on the scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're good people, pero like también es como que
Don't
también
push
no
us.
te pases,
Yeah.
¿verdad? Eso como que like your kids should not be kicking. Like now, it's
Yeah.
not just like you can't control their tears really sometimes, right?
100%.
But you can control their like
Their moves, yeah,
they're
like-
hitting your seat. Like,
Yeah.
And I feel like I was a good kid. Like me and my sister always traveled together, and like we were like always
Muy bien
no
portaditos.
llorábamos, nothing. But I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like there's a certain point too where I'm like, children are a product of their environment, so I'm judging the parent.
You're judging the parents. Yeah.
Like, no los regañas, a mí escupas que
Not their
regañarlos.
parenting. Well, maybe that's a double standard. I don't know. But I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm judging their parenting, but I'm like, girl, lo aprendió de alguien.
Lo aprendió porque no estaban, or like,
More
no
present.
estaban sus
That's
papás,
real.
you
I guess
know?
we can't judge too much, but yeah, sometimes it's like,
Yeah.
But it's so funny because the other day, so when I was with my nephew and my sister, we were in the car, and y'all know I curse all the time. So I was saying, man, fuck this and fuck that.
You
and my
do?
sister was like, language. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, my nephew. Because I'm like, he's at a point where he's observing everything.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, I think we went to eat. It was my nephew and one of my brothers. And I went to go get a fork, right? And my brother was like, oh, a fork. And my nephew was like, you can't say that word. And my brother was like, why? It's a fork. And I was like, fool. What word starts with F and kind of sounds like fork? And he was like, oh. And I was like, dude, not my nephew judging me because he heard me say, hey, fuck the other day. I was like, oh, gosh.
he's at preschool like, fuck. Kidding.
That'd be hilarious.
Was you know the one
Mi
thing,
tío me
the
dijo.
thing I don't, I love that.
Que fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you. Y que chingue-
Y que chingue su madre. Oh, that'd be funny.
On the school report,
Ya
pues
así
su
con la
tío le
mano.
dijo que...
Dijo que su
No,
tío
yo soy
dijo
la
que
tía, no el tío.
Sí, yo soy la tía. El tío tiene
Otro
más.
tío fue.
Blame my
tío
brother.
fue.
Yeah. Hilarious.
The one thing I don't judge, and I try to be as compassionate as possible. Pero the one thing I don't judge is parents who feel like they need to use devices to keep their kids entertained, like in public spaces. Like, because I've been with my nieces, I've seen how exhausting it can be. So I totally understand parents needing to use these devices for some relief for themselves, for like their behavior in public spaces. Like if y'all need that for your little bit of well-being, I respect it, I understand it because I've seen the magic it can do.
The magic, the healing.
I mean, you have to like restore your energy a little bit, and like, you know, parents, I mean, obviously it's not good to be on your devices a lot, but I understand and I'm compassionate to why parents need to use some devices sometimes to keep their kids.
100%. I think as long as there's boundaries.
Oh, of course. Siempre.
You know, and the thing is, like, the other thing I'm learning, it's like society is going to parent your child
Yeah.
without consent. 'cause
Right.
it's society.
That's a good point.
And so society is always going to be parenting your child. Then it's up to you to also have a greater absolute value in your own parenting
Yeah.
in comparison to society. You know what I mean? I say that because even as much as you want to be like, and some folks do it, just don't give their children any sort of technology.
Yeah.
It's around us and everything we do.
Yeah.
So how either you ease them into it or just setting boundaries, I think.
Yeah,
it's
just being thoughtful.
important.
Of
Being
course, of
thoughtful,
course.
for sure. But I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
the same thing with my nephew.
Yeah.
I do find it a little weird sometimes that I was like, not this fool learning how to scroll in your own, like that's an advanced
Right.
locomotor skill.
Oh yeah,
bitch.
but like
It's weird.
These little kids, I don't know who. Like, there's some weird stuff in the people that are making like
because they're
They're doing technology in the
because they're-
womb, girl. At this
because
point,
they're
like
so
they come out.
they're
knowing how
so
to do
good at
everything.
like my
100%.
5-year-old niece. I feel like is better at using the iPad than my mom. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Like I'm almost sure of it.
Or better than us at
Dude,
this point.
The other day, my nephew asked me for my phone number because he has like his iPad is connected to an email that my
Yeah.
sister manages, of course. But like he don't open no emails, but you know you have to
Yeah.
have it and stuff. So he was like, "Give me your number, Theo. I want to call you." And I was like. But now I'm just like, it hasn't happened. I just gave it to him the other day. But now I'm just kind of laughing like, oh my God. Like I'm totally going to cry the moment my nephew calls me porque le nació.
Yeah.
O sea, like
Yeah.
I want to talk to my tío. And I was like, I'm not ready for that moment. It's going to I'm going to cry when it happens. I
Yeah,
know.
no,
that's so
5
cute, though.
5 is like feels like I'm seeing my niece really like grow up, and it's like, oh my god, you're like a real child, like a real human now.
Yeah,
it's not like a
'cause-
toddler. Toddler's different. But when
they're still aliens.
But when they're 5, they're like, oh, you're starting to see how their mind is working. They're thinking about like...
And the questions they ask you, and you're like, I didn't ask that when I was young. I hope I did it. Like,
And
you're trying to figure out how to...
threading together the world.
Yeah.
And you're just like my nephew's saying complete sentence. And I'm like, where did this happen?
Yeah.
How am I having a conversation with you?
Yeah. Yeah. Real quick. So I want to introduce, I've been listening to this book about parenting. I'm, not a parent, but I've been thinking about, as a tia, like when I spend time with my nieces, what opportunities do I have? Because, there is a responsibility if we choose to accept it as tias, to impart wisdom, to impart, a lot of lessons to the little humans in our lives. So anyways, this is this book called Unconditional Parenting. And the concept of it is that you love your kids. It's pretty simple, but that you love your kids unconditionally based on who they are, not how they behave or what they do. Right. And you would think like, that's just like, and of course, like we love our children unconditionally, but what the book posits is that society and also like more traditional parenting techniques actually have been enforcing more conditional parenting where you sort of show love only when your kids behave in the way that you think they should behave and when they achieve what you think that they should achieve. And basically the book argues that can be really detrimental to kids' self-esteem
100%.
and also to them actually being self-actualized and really following what they really, like what's in their inner purpose rather than like thinking, just doing what society expects them to do. Because when you are behaving just to like receive love, then, or you are achieving in order to receive love, then you are, you might start to put your self-worth attached to your achievement. O sea, you like, okay, I get love when I do.
That's our trauma.
Right. And it's been interesting listening to this book because I was thinking I was going to learn about different techniques on how to be with my nieces. And I actually learned something about myself. And I would say that my mom was an unconditional lover. But what I realized is that because I started doing really well in school when I was little, I started to think that that's how I received love, that by achieving. And so when I wasn't achieving, I didn't think I was worthy of love. And I'm now unraveling as an adult how attached I was to achievement. And my self-worth was attached to achievement.
That comes up sometimes with my nephew, and it's something that I think my sister and I are very conscious of it, and we try, and she'll share with me things that my nephew will say, and we talk about it, and we'll talk that those are manifestations of like our traumas, and so we try very hard to interrupt those things. Yeah. But like, for example, and it's part of our parents' traumas too, right? Yeah. Like I think my parents, to them, their love language was like, as long as there's food on the table, then I love you. Yeah. And so my dad, I think, has always done this thing of like literally measuring the hourly rate of everything I do. And that is like a reflection of my worth. And so if I'm making somewhere 30 an hour versus I'm making somewhere 50 an hour, then oh shit, you bomb, right? And so I've had to learn that like, that's not the value of my worth. It's not based on my hourly rate. But my nephew, like I'll sometimes send my mom money, especially if she's taking care of my nephew, so they can go have breakfast or whatever my nephew needs, you know what I mean? And so my nephew has done this thing now where like he'll tell my mom, oh, like let's send a selfie to Theo Richie. And then I think my mom at some point was like, oh, it's because your Theo Richie sends us money. Yeah. And so now he's been like, let's send a photo to Theo Richie because he sends us money.
Let me send a photo to Theo Richie.
Right. And I was like, Mom, we need to deconstruct that because I don't need him to think that my love is conditioned by, or that money is conditioned by my love or vice versa. Yeah. And so that's been something we're trying to unpack. Yeah. But yeah.
So there's some beautiful things in the book that like it really like tries to present, sort of push back on the idea of using rewards and punishment so much, and because of the impact that they can have on kids. So that's been, but yeah, it's hard because that's how we grew up. Like, you know, time out, like, you know, telling people like that, you know, giving them rewards when they, whatever. So it's like hard to think about a different way, but I'm still listening to the book for the like different ways to do this. But yeah, it just feels, it's been kind of like mind opening, both for me reflecting on myself as a little kid, but also it's like, how do we break these patterns of parenting? Yeah.
And sometimes there's some grace to give too, because I thought about it too. Like
Oh yes, thank you for bringing that up.
my parents, like they were young parents. I mean, they got married, then have kids and stuff, but they're also like kids learning how to survive in like the new country, and like sometimes they're like so focused on surviving that they might not have the time to like see what's wrong or like what you're missing, and I don't know, be there as a parent.
Yeah.
I saw this like really beautiful TikTok. I don't know if you saw it the other day. It's like this little boy was coloring on the walls,
Yeah.
like all over the house,
Yeah.
and it was like instead of like reprimanding him por colorear donde quiera, like putting him in art classes and buying him like an easel and art and like channeling that like energy into like what he creatively can do. And I was thinking like I have so many cousins that like are super creative, but like our parents didn't grow up in a creative space and didn't know how to like where
Nurture
to put
that.
us and put that into. But
Yeah.
I think having some grace too for our parents that were just trying to like survive. I don't know.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes we got to do what we
Sometimes
got
it's
to
hard.
do.
Like
yeah.
we're not parents yet, but I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine like
Yeah.
having to juggle all these different things and still, I don't know.
Cute. With that, I think we're coming to the end of our episode, and we just want to take a moment to just send y'all some love. If you have kids, if you don't have kids and you want them and are trying to create an environment to bring them into, if you decided that you're not having them and maybe you're grieving that, or if you're not grieving that at all, like and you are loving life, like we just want to send everybody some love and wherever you are on your journey. Any other last words?
I think just, extending some unconditional love to our listeners, igual.
Yeah.
I think it's a conversation that we don't give ourselves enough space to have. And I think also coming from like queer folks, it's a different perspective to bring it in. And I think, it's important in some ways you hear different perspectives about our relationship to parenting and children. And, don't feel like you need to have the pressure to have them. Like, I think also for bodies who are birthing bodies, like your body is not worth or by the function of your reproductive function.
Yes.
Y pues también they're under attack, girls. And so even though you're not birthing them, you might know someone who can. So fight for the rights.
Yeah.
Fight for the right.
Fight for the rights.
All right, y'all. Pues como siempre, síganos. Please subscribe. Please put in the comments. We want to interact with y'all. Share an episode, all the things. We appreciate any and all kinds of support, including monetary. So
Leave a rating.
Please show
Rate us.
Rate us, review us, show us some love, por favorcito. Y con eso, recuerden que la vida es más sabrosa con nosotras porque somos
Las Paleteras.
Las Paleteras.
Hi, Paletitas. This podcast is produced by Joel and Elpidio Perez, along with your hosts. Las Paleteras is edited by Augusto Martinez, with music by Cintia Morado and Ingrid Guijarro. Special thanks to our friends at Mitu and Sonoro for production support.